Do you know that there is a strange moment that happens to people who do not give up? Not the dramatic kind, not the rock bottom kind. It is quieter than that. It is the moment you realize you're still standing, but you don't remember when you stopped moving. Life did not collapse, nothing exploded, no single decision ruined everything. You just kept going. And one day, you notice you have been walking in a circle. Most people assume starting over happens after failure. It does not. It usually happens after endurance. After you've endured a version of life long enough to master it, and then realize mastery doesn't equal meaning. That's when it gets complicated. Because how do you justify leaving something you worked so hard to build? Let us slow this down. Imagine your life as a long hallway. Every door is a version of you. Some doors you never opened. Some you rushed through. Some you locked behind you because you were sure. Now imagine you are standing in front of a door you chose years ago. You decorated it, defended it, explained it to others. And lately, you have been avoiding looking at it too closely, because something about it feels wrong. Not broken, just smaller than you remember. Here is the part nobody prepares you for. Outgrowing your life feels almost identical to failing at it. Same confusion, same shame, same "what am I doing wrong" spiral. So most people don't name it correctly. They call it laziness. They call it lack of discipline. They call it burnout. But what it actually is misalignment. And misalignment doesn't respond to effort. You cannot grind your way into a life that no longer fits. This is why starting over feels illegal. It threatens the narrative. You've been taught that progress must be linear. That consistency equals character. That stopping means weakness. But nobody tells you what happens when consistency traps you in a version of yourself that expired. Nobody tells you that some of the strongest people you'll ever meet quietly restarted their lives without announcing it. Let me describe a scene that almost everyone recognizes. You're doing something ordinary, laundry, showering, waiting for a page to load, and suddenly, without warning, a thought slips in. Is this really it? Not in a dramatic way, in a tired way. That question doesn't come from negativity. It comes from awareness. It is the sound of a part of you waking up after being ignored for years. Here, why starting over feels so heavy. Because you're not just changing direction. You are grieving a version of yourself that tried their best with the information they had at the time. You are saying goodbye to effort, to hope, to the person who genuinely believed this path would lead somewhere else. That is not quitting. That is mourning. And most people don't know how to grieve versions of themselves, so they stay. They stay in careers they outgrew, relationships that stopped evolving, cities that feel smaller every year, identities that no longer feel honest. And they call it being realistic. But realism without truth becomes resignation. Starting over doesn't happen all at once. That is another lie. It happens in micro moments. The moment you stop defending your choices in your head. The moment you admit privately, "I don't want this anymore." The moment you stop asking for permission to feel different. No one claps for those moments, but they change everything. There is a misconception that starting over erases your past. It doesn't. It reframes it. Every skill you learned, every mistake you made, every season you survived. They do not disappear. They reposition. Starting over is not a reset button. It's a recalibration. Here is something unsettling. The people who never start over do not avoid pain. They postpone it. They live comfortable lives with quiet resentment humming underneath everything. They become very good at coping but not at living. They look stable. They look responsible. They look together. And inside, something keeps asking, how long are we going to ignore this? Starting over is not reckless. Staying somewhere that drains you is. But society praises endurance more than alignment, so people confuse the two. Think about how often people say, "At least it is stable." Stable does not mean alive. Stable does not mean growing. Stable just means familiar, and familiarity is powerful. It keeps people in situations that no longer challenge them, no longer excite them, no longer reflect who they have become. This is why starting over feels lonely. Because when you change internally before your life changes externally, no one else can see it yet. You are carrying a future that has not arrived. And that gap between who you are becoming and what your life still looks like is deeply uncomfortable. Most people close that gap by shrinking their future. A few choose to expand their courage. Starting over does not mean burning bridges. It means building new ones quietly. Different habits, different questions, different standards for what you tolerate. It is not dramatic. It is deliberate. At some point, you realize something subtle but important. You're allowed to change your mind about what success looks like, about who you want to impress, about what kind of life feels worth the effort. That realization alone is freedom. If you are listening to this and feeling restless, if you feel guilty for wanting something else, if you keep thinking, I should be grateful, so why am I unhappy? That does not make you broken. It makes you honest. Starting over does not mean you were wrong before. It means you are right now. And that matters more. There is a version of you in the future who will look back at this moment with gratitude. Not because everything worked out perfectly, but because you did not abandon yourself when the truth got uncomfortable. Most people wait for a breaking point. You don't have to. You're allowed to choose clarity before crisis. You're allowed to leave before resentment hardens. You're allowed to begin again while things still look fine. Starting over is not the end of your story. It's the chapter where your story stops being inherited and starts being intentional. And if this hit deeper than you expected, the next video breaks down why your 20s are for reinvention and not necessarily for success. Watch that next. This is where momentum begins.